Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how is it going?
Tony, we are down, but we are not out. The listeners are doing their very best to just bury us under an avalanche of questions. We are digging out as best we can. I can't see the sun yet, but I feel confident that by the time we get through this show, we may have at least found an air pocket. But we'll see.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where the arm comes bursting through the snow after the avalanche, and then it's like, well, we got air, but how do we go about getting up there? And my favorite part about this next batch of questions, however many it ends up being, the first one starts with "I want." It's like, oh, okay, this is what I get. I go ahead and please help us out. Send us some questions, and then they get a little bit bossy, but that's fine. That's what we're here for.
It's Christmas week. People are used to asking for stuff, so this is what I want. Now, the name is OSU Beast. I'm not sure that suggests naughty list to me. So maybe the answer to this one is just Cole, but we'll see. I want a breakdown of each position group and how they fared this year on defense. Like it to include strengths and weaknesses with what we've heard coming back, along with a deep dive on how the position coaches did specifically.
Now, Tom, I do not have a notebook written with all of this down. So we can go defensive ends, defensive tackles, linebackers, safeties, corners, I guess. To me, the defensive ends, I think they fared better as run stoppers than pass rushers, which is ironic because it could be argued that the defensive tackles fared better as pass rushers than run stoppers. Now, I think overall, the run defense was good throughout. You had a couple of issues, let's say 3 of them: Minnesota, Oregon, and Michigan. But to me, that carries as much weight as all of the good games that they had between those. Like, to me, these outliers mean a lot. And I've said that those first 2 games, that was a scheme issue. I think there are still some scheme issues against Michigan, but the defensive line was getting pushed around, and that was both defensive ends, that was both defensive tackles. But in terms of how the defensive ends fared this year, I expected more. I don't know that anybody didn't. Strengths, run stopping was better than the pass rushing. They had very few sacks. And no, Tom, the measure of defensive ends can't just be sacks, but also a measure of defensive ends contractually in terms of bonuses and how much money you want to make. It's measured in sacks. So you need those, and pressure is nice and this and that, but sacks are better, and there weren't a lot of them. In terms of, you can go ahead and we can get into like the deep dive on Larry Johnson. I don't think this is his best year. I think he had the talent to work with. He had some veterans. Now, do you know week to week when Tyreek Smith is going to be healthy? No. When Tyler Friday is going to be healthy? This is the first time in Tyler Friday's career when they knew he wasn't going to be available or would be available because he was out all season. There's no question. So, I think a lot of this also comes down to just there's more expected of Zach Harrison. And I certainly expected more. And if he comes back, I was going to say I would expect more, but now I don't know. I don't know that I would. Like, yes, you expect more, but what's more? 5 sacks, 7 tackles for loss? Like, how much even if this is a new defense, even if this is a new defensive line coach, where do your expectations go for Zach Harrison and Tom? And I'll let you talk about whatever you want, because I know I said a lot.
Yeah, and that's interesting because it's, the defensive ends were it feels like just for a couple of years now, we've just kind of been saying, well, they're good, they're getting pressure, they're just not getting there. And that you can be a good defensive end and not sack the quarterback, and you can impact the opposing offense without sacking the quarterback. But I mean, at some point you have to sack the quarterback. Like, that's an important part of the process. And the defensive ends, I think Tyreek Smith was the one that forced the fumble on Jerron Cage's scoop and score. Zach Harrison was the one who forced the fumble on Haskell Garrett's scoop and score. So it wasn't like these guys were just complete non-factors all season, but just they never quite got to the level that you sort of expected. Like, the default assumption was, okay, Joey Bosa, Nick Bosa, Chase Young, there's a certain level of production and progression of production you see from these guys. And then since Chase Young left, you haven't had anyone hit that level again. You haven't had the guy with 12 sacks. You haven't had the guy who just is completely a game changer, who is in the conversation for all of the national defensive awards. You haven't had that guy. And, it's a little bit like the cornerback conversation where it's like, when you're an Ohio State cornerback, you have a freshman year, and then you have a year where you're okay. And then you have a year where you're really good. And then you're off to the NFL as a first round draft pick. That's how it works for everyone. Well, sometimes the assembly line stops and it stops working like that. And that just kind of feels like how it's been with the defensive ends. And I don't know how much of that to attribute to injuries, because to your point, like Tyreke Smith has been hurt a bunch. Tyler Friday has been hurt a bunch. Zach Harrison was, I think, unavailable at least once or twice this year. But at the same time, like JT Tuimoloau was, I think, a lot better than we expected. So how much of that credit do you want to give to JT Tuimoloau just in terms of like, wow, he's an incredible freak athlete, and to the point where he can show up in, August and just immediately be on the field game one and making an impact. It feels kind of unfair to look at, he had 2.5 sacks this year. Tyreke Smith had 3 sacks this year. It just feels a little unfair. Zach Harrison had 4. It just feels a little unfair to say it's Larry Johnson's fault that Zach Harrison and Tyreke Smith are, not getting to the quarterback, but it's not, Larry Johnson gets no credit for JT Tuimoloau being able to do this stuff immediately. That feels a little unfair to me. So, and, the interior of the defensive line too Haskell Garrett had a good year, 7 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks. He led the team in sacks, which, your interior defensive linemen, Haskell Garrett and Tyleik Williams were 1-2 in the team in sacks. That's great for the interior. That's not great for the defensive end. So again, what do you want to attribute it to? Because it feels like Haskell Garrett had a quiet season, but that's basically the Devon Hamilton season, right? As an interior defensive lineman. So, I feel like we're going to go through this whole defense, and it's like, who would you grade out as like really outstanding this year? I don't feel like there's any position group we're going to grade out as like really outstanding on the whole, not individual players, but like a whole position group. I don't know that there's anyone I'm going to say like, oh yeah, A, even like B+. Like it was like, yeah, it was fine. And it was a mixture of players. It was a mixture of scheme. It was a mixture of injuries. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes into taking this many skilled players and getting the results that they did or didn't get.
We also have no idea who was out for practice at times, because this is something that's been going on for 2 years in terms of COVID, like who is out, who's practicing. How much does that impact? I know a lot of people were upset with like the lack of playing time for Tyleik Williams. That's a question that I would like to have answered. He still played, but his numbers, like his production, seemed to be would have seemed to call for more snaps. But then you've got 3 seniors, 3 fifth, 6th-year seniors who are playing defensive tackle in essence, and so it's hard to play in front of those guys. And then in terms of who's coming back, we know Tyler Friday, or we assume Tyler Friday is. He's posted as such when he was injured for the season. Javonte Jean-Baptiste, we don't know about Zach Harrison yet. Tyreke Smith is playing in the Senior Bowl, so it looks like he is done. And obviously JT Tuimoloau, Jack Sawyer are back, adding Kenyatta Jackson, Caden Curry, possibly Amari Abor. I mean, there's Darian Henry Young left for the portal. Jacoby Cowan is still on the team and in entering his 3rd year. He was out his entire freshman year with an injury and has really been trying to grow into a spot. Same with maybe Cormonte Hamilton, who came to Ohio State as a tight end via a Greyhound bus and is still looking for a home somewhere on this Ohio State roster. Defensive tackles, I like what they have in Mike Hall and Tyleik Williams. I wonder about the depth, obviously. Now they need to make sure they get like Hero Canoe in as well in this recruiting class. I don't think they're going to be as deep as they were this year, but I mean, it would never shock me to see them be more productive just based on the lack of statistical production this year. And real quick on Haskell Garrett, who was an All-American last year, I think he had 2 sacks and 4 tackles for loss, about 20 tackles. So he had about the same year this year, more backfield tackles, but also played in like 5 or 6 more games. But we know the way he started last year with the crazy drama that put him in the news, and then people knew his name, and that's a lot of that is half the battle when you're looking for All-American accolades. So I think next year maybe not as deep, but there's going to be some guys, JT Tuimoloau being one, Jack Sawyer being another, where you wonder how much guys will play in front of them, and does that hinder their production? Does that hinder how good Ohio State can be? Those guys are losing snaps to Tyler Friday, Javonte Jean-Baptiste, and even Zach Harrison, guys who have been around a long time, but really haven't exploded into all Big Ten caliber players.
Yeah, and assuming Harrison is gone, and assuming Tyreek Smith is gone, I would not at all be surprised to see JT Tuimoloau as the starter. And are you losing snaps to guys who are behind you in the rotation? Yeah, I guess, but they're not ever going to play defensive ends 65 snaps a game, so you're not really losing them. I don't. I would not expect seniority to be the deciding factor on who starts next year. And if JT Tuimoloau has been more productive than some of those veteran guys, so I expect him to play. And Jack Sawyer probably slots in more at that Leo spot next year. So that's is that a Javonte Jean-Baptiste spot also? Like maybe, but I think Jack Sawyer is the guy who probably is the guy who takes that position and kind of runs with it. So yeah, I don't expect those guys to really eat into the younger guys' performance. Linebacker, I mean, this is another one where it's like you feel like you kind of need to grade them incomplete because everyone's been hurt all year and they are so desperately thin. And, I don't think you can say anything like great about Al Washington and, how the linebackers have played the last 2 years as when he's been in charge, but also how much of that is on Billy Davis and the fact that they just, I think the linebacker recruiting was not what you thought it was towards the end of the Billy Davis tenure. And, the Taraja Mitchell, Dallas Gant, Kayvon Pope class, it just didn't pan out. It just didn't work. And, Mitchell played a little, played some this year, but lost his job to a guy who moved over from offense in the summertime. That's not a great thing if you were in your 4th year as a linebacker at a school. So, and Mitchell Melton's been out for the year. Cody Simon's just been banged up and hasn't been able to stay on the field. Tommy Eichenberg, I think, was banged up at various points. Paula Teote, they bring him in as a transfer. He's been banged up on and off all year. It just they just and Reed Carrico, I think, just wasn't ready to contribute yet. He's coming from a small school, so it's going to take a little time to adapt to Ohio State and be ready to contribute. And it's like, and we're already running out of linebackers, and it's everyone is either hurt or just didn't really pan out. So I mean, we'll see. I think this is potentially the area where you might see the biggest leap next year. Because Jim Knowles is, yes, a defensive coordinator, but also he's kind of a linebackers guy. And I don't know if Al Washington slides somewhere else on the defense next year or if he stays there, but Knowles also maybe has an impact there. But Knowles may have like more specific thoughts on exactly what linebackers should be doing as a linebacker guy. This year, Ohio State's, coordinators were both, Combs and Barnes were both kind of back end guys rather than linebacker guys. So, they may be a little more secondary focused in their thinking. It feels like linebacker might be a spot where you see Ohio State just between health and, bringing in CJ Hicks, bringing in Sonny Styles, if he slots in there, like you've got some young impact guys. You've got Steel Chambers, who's going to finally have a full year as a linebacker. He's been really good, especially given all of the, the circumstances around the fact that he only moved over there over the summer. It feels like that might be the unit where they are most improved this time next year.
Yeah, I view this a lot like we viewed the difference between the secondary last year and the secondary this year, where you have so many more options this year than you did last year. And they'll have so many more options at linebacker next year than they do this year because Mitchell Melton will be healthy. You expect everybody will be healthy. Cody Simon will finally be healthy, get his shoulder taken care of and be ready to go. And all of these guys are more experienced than they were a year ago or than they were this year. So yeah, I'm with you. I would expect them to take a big leap, and really it's a 2.5 position person position where it's two linebackers, and sometimes you'll have a third linebacker in there. Sometimes that third linebacker is going to be a defensive end. So you've got, I don't know what, 8 probably scholarship guys to search through to find 2 spots, and then also a guy that can be a Sam here and there. And I guess we could probably just incorporate the next question into this as we continue to go through the defense. But do you guys think they'll rotate Carrico and now Teote at the second linebacker position next year? That's from primetime once. I don't know that now Teote, you can't really count on him per se because of the injury history that he's had throughout his career. So will he be healthy when the spots are being competed for and being battled for? Carrico, is he a Will or is he a Mike? You tell me that, then maybe I can give you a better answer of whether or not he's going to play. I don't think he's going to be in a rotation next year unless he comes out of nowhere and wins a job, because we still don't know what's happening with Taraja Mitchell. And you look at the middle linebacker between Cody Simon and Tommy Eichenberg. I assume that that's going to be those two. And is that where Mitchell Melton is? Is Mitchell Melton a part-time Sam? Like, we don't know who that Sam is. Is that Sam? Are they looking for a big Sam? Are they looking for a mobile Sam like a CJ Hicks? Are they looking for both? There's still a lot to be figured out with this defense. Then at will, Steel Chambers, is Taraja Mitchell back? Like I said, is CJ Hicks in the 2 deep right away? Because Tommy Eichenberg he didn't start playing until his 3rd year. Is Carrico going to beat that by a year? Is Mitchell Melton? Cody Simon got some playing time. This was his 2nd year and was a starting middle linebacker for Ohio State, or certainly in the rotation. So, different guys develop at different speeds, but I don't know. I couldn't, if you're asking me for like a 2 deep for next year, Tom, at the linebackers, it's going to be the same 2 deep this year until I know where everybody's going. It's like it's Steel Chambers and Taraja Mitchell at the will, and it's Tommy Eichenberg and Cody Simon at the mic, because that's really all I know right now.
Right. And, what exactly is Jim Knowles looking for from each of those spots? And is he going to, sure, CJ Hicks could win a spot in there at some point. Sure, some of those guys could transfer or decide that they're, maybe some of those guys move to a different spot. Maybe someone moves to the Leo spot. There's so many variables there. I just was looking. Reed Carrico played in 5 games this year. He's listed in the official Ohio State site as having played in 5 games this year, which seems almost impossible, because if he played in 4, then he gets another year of eligibility. And he's listed as having played in 5, both in the game-by-game total tackles and at the top. That seems like that has to be an error, that he was credited for someone else's tackle at some point and didn't really play in 5. That would be a pretty significant mistake if they did that. So I find that pretty hard to believe. But yeah, no, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just looking at snap counts. I have him for playing in 4 games. So
yeah, I think the official stats must be wrong on that, because that doesn't seem possible. So
Mayan Williams is credited with a tackle or something in there that went to Carrico, probably something like that, because they both were 28.
Yeah, that would be my guess. But yeah, there's a lot of those young guys. There's a lot of talent in that room, young talent, especially guys enrolling later in 2022. But there's just so many moving parts there that I think it's almost impossible to try and pin down like who's going to be the top 2, because it's like, you say names and it's like, well, that guy can't possibly still be there and still be in the top. But it's like, well, I mean, maybe you can't say never at this point. And I feel like a lot of the defensive backfield is that way too, where I will tell you with 100% certainty, Denzel Burke, if healthy, Denzel Burke will be the number 1 starting corner next year. If healthy, Cam Brown will be the number 2 starting corner next year. Feel very good about those 2 picks. I think that's going to be a pretty good pretty good couple spots in the secondary. How about the rest of the secondary? Well, look at this. We're out of time. Like, is Josh Proctor healthy? That was a bad break on that leg. And like, if he has recovered and if he's healthy, like that to me kind of answers one of those questions. But there's a big if there. And there's a lot of other names that you go through the depth chart in the secondary. And it's like, well, What are they going to want to do with Ronnie Hickman? Are they going to move him to, are they going to move him down to linebacker? Is that something they look at doing? Or do you keep him? I mean, because he was so good this year. Ronnie Hickman. I don't know that people really appreciate this. Cody Simon was second on the tackles with 54, second on the team in tackles with 54 this year. 54, second on the team. Ronnie Hickman, 97. Like he's putting up like Chris Spielman tackle numbers. Like what? How is that? What? He was really good this year. Good, consistent. He was, he wasn't perfect. There was not a lot of perfection on the back end of the Ohio State defense this year, but as far as things that I think they were feeling relatively good about for most of the year, I think Ronnie Hickman has to be pretty high on that list.
He will end up with, assuming he gets a few more tackles, he'll be the first Buckeye with 100 tackles in a season since Raekwon McMillan in 2016. It's been a while. And to me, like, he is one of your two starting safeties. I think that's what he is, because I view Jim Knowles' nickel as, well, I guess, and that's another question. Is it a corner or is it a safety? Is his nickel a corner or a safety? If it's a corner, then you have Ronnie Hickman playing safety. If it's a safety, then I guess you have him playing that nickel. Then, Tom, who are the other two safeties? Lathan Ransom, probably, and then it's Bryson Shaw or Josh Proctor. And I wonder if they'll know exactly what they have in Josh Proctor before the season. Like, will they know whether he can't play? In terms of, if he shows them he can't play, then he can't play. But I don't know that they'll know whether or not he can hold up, whether he is the answer, until during the season when things are flying for real. And there's practice players who play well during practice and maybe don't do it during a game. And I'm not saying that's what he is. I'm with you. There's a huge question mark on what he is able to do, because he was such a fantastic athlete before the injury. And I believe it was a compound fracture, and it's not easy to come back from that. And is he back day one? Is this something where, well, he's 100% on October 14th, and okay, now you're 100%. How do you work yourself back into it, and how long does that take? There's a lot of questions just with Josh Proctor, and then they have guys who have played: Lathan Ransom, Bryson Shaw, Ronnie Hickman. Jansen Dunn was injured. Andre Turrentine played a little. You bring in Kai Stokes as another safety. You have some options. The questions are many in terms of, where is Ronnie Hickman playing? How healthy is Josh Proctor? Bryson Shaw had his ups and downs. Can he play at this level? Like, can he play consistently at this level? I think that's a question that I know many people are already saying no, but he was a redshirt sophomore this past year. It's hard to write somebody off who has been starting in their third year and say, no, they can't play at this level. It's like, well, he has been. So, I mean, can he continue to do that? So many questions at safety for me.
Yeah, I feel like there's kind of just throw a bunch of names in a bag and shake it up and pull something out. And it's like, yeah, sure. And, corner, I mean, J.K. Johnson versus Jordan Hancock as the third/fourth corner, if Legend Cavazos, or, is Seven Banks back? I mean, there's a lot of, you can kind of pick a name for a lot of those spots outside of basically the two corner spots, the whole defensive backfield. And, you want to grade the defensive backfield. I mean, the defensive backfield hasn't been great this year, but again, like, they lost the safety. Like, the safety, the way Ryan Day wanted to play defense, that one high safety was like the key piece of that defense. And then against Oregon, you lost him. And then you had to remake everything on the fly. So, obviously having to rely on a true freshman corner is not ideal, but it worked out great for them this year. So how much credit do you want to give them? How much blame do you want to give them? I don't know. I mean, sure.
Yeah, I don't think the secondary was a problem. I give them a lot of credit for changing defenses on the fly and being able to hold up relatively well. And, they're still, it wasn't perfect, obviously, but man, I mean, you lose the linchpin, and then you change defenses in midstream. I think they held up better than other Ohio State defenses that didn't make any changes. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. Next one from at JD Morris. There's, I don't know, like 7 R's in here. It's JD's fault, not mine. I'm not counting those. And I'm also not answering this question because the NFL is a lie. It's college football heaven. Once players leave college football, they're gone. We know they exist somewhere else, but they're not, I don't see them, so it doesn't matter. So Tony, what do the Bears need to do the most in the offseason to help Justin Fields succeed next year?
So, Tom, you think that have we talked about this before? Where you think college football players just go and play on a farm? They get to go run around on a football farm, and
yeah,
they're happy.
I'm told that this place exists, but I haven't personally seen it. The only football NFL content I consume is the Lions on Thanksgiving Day, and that's because I married into a Detroit Lions family. So that's it. So I'm aware of one NFL game a year. There's rumors of something the first weekend of February with a bunch of commercials in it. I don't generally whatever. It's fine. If it happens to be on TV, that's fine. But yes, other than that, yeah, I mean, I have been led to believe that Justin Fields was, sent to go play on a farm upstate. Is that not true?
Well, he has been sent to slaughter. We can say that, and it happens on a weekly basis because Matt Nagy's offense is terrible and the offensive line is bad, and it's a dumb team and they have a dumb coach. And no offense to Matt Nagy, but it's a program in need of a new head coach, and they will get that. That's what they need. That's the need most in the offseason to help Justin Fields succeed is a new coach, a competent offense. It frustrates me because I don't watch the NFL much. I'll have it on in the background sometimes on Sundays, but I don't pay attention, and I hate watch it just so I can hate tweet about it as well, because can be really tough. We like college football because the ball will move, and you watch the NFL and it's like two teams struggling to do anything good. And it's like, why am I watching this? 13-10 does nothing for me when it's a bunch of professionals who are at the top of their game. And it's like, but you scored 1 touchdown today. And so it frustrates me to watch Justin Fields when the only passes he can really throw, because it's all he has time for, and it's the only people getting open, is in the flats and dump offs. And this is a guy that can throw the ball all over the field and can zip it down the middle and do all of this. And just to see him throw to running backs and tight ends, it reminded me of when the Browns drafted Brady Quinn. And that's all Brady Quinn did at Notre Dame, except for some deep shots to
Samardzija.
Yeah, Samardzija, and also they had another guy there. But other than that, it was check down city, and it's frustrating. The Bears do have some receivers, but they don't have the offensive line, and they don't have the offense right now. But I don't have any concerns that he's not going to succeed there, even though our old buddy Ryan Ginn tweeted out a list of the Bears head coaches over the last since Ditka left, and it's not good. And I see Dick Duran there for 6 years or whatever, and it's oh no. And he might be the second best behind Lovie Smith of that group, because I wouldn't put Wannstedt up there. So I do expect when the Bears make a call to Ann Arbor, Michigan for Jim Harbaugh, I expect Jim Harbaugh to take that call and be like, really? I'll get to coach Justin Fields? Do you mean it? And have a quarterback that he can't ruin? Boy, I think he's going to take that job. Lickety split, Tom.
Speaking of Jim Harbaugh, our next one from at Tony_Lisa13. Lots of folks have taken shots at Ohio State, from Harbaugh to Howard, Desmond Howard, of course. I understand why he didn't offer a retort, but wouldn't it be epic if Ryan Day returned fire every now and then? Tony, my question to you, wouldn't that be basically, Michigan players and recruits shooting for the last 10 years, shooting their mouths off, and Ohio State fans going, you can't talk now. You got to win the game. Doesn't Ryan Day have to win the game before he talks again? Seems like you got to handle your business in the field, doesn't it?
Exactly right. Because if you start talking and then you don't handle your business, more fun is had at your expense. And and just imagine if Ryan Day did come out and say something, all of the angry Buckeye fans that think you need to be tougher and you need to be this and you need to be that would be so mad at him, because they're like, win it and then start talking. Like, stop trying to be a tough guy. And it's like, but I thought you wanted me to. I was trying to be tough. You don't want me to be tough. And right now, there's maybe a little bit too much anger aimed at Ryan Day for losing to Michigan. That really, there's a segment of Buckeye fans who don't want to hear from you right now. There's others who are like, well, this is the spoils of war. You don't get that opportunity to say something. And then if you do, you're just providing the same kind of fuel that you've been lapping up over the last month or so since Ohio State lost to Michigan. Like, Ohio State has been just soaking it in and taking it. And this is, I think it's kind of like a solar power where you soak in the rays and then it'll spit out some electricity. Like, soak in the rays of the Michigan talk. You don't need to say anything. Just store it up, keep it in a battery, and then next November, or once off-season workouts begin in February, let that start to power you up and go from there. But yeah, I don't. Ryan Day has been so like, I am not going to say anything right now about anybody. Ryan, did you feel like maybe the Heisman ceremony was kind of jerkish to CJ Stroud in Ohio State? I respect that award. And so this is where he is right now. He's not going to say anything because look what happened when the whole hang 100 thing came out, and look at the result.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that Michigan focused on. They used. So why give them more?
Right. And you know, I as someone who is like as pro trash talk in college football as anyone could possibly be, like, absolutely, like, you win a game, your official Twitter account should just be dragging the other team. Like, that makes it a lot of fun. When you lose, like, you got to stand there and take it. Like, that's it. You just got to take it. That's how it works. These are the rules of the game. So he's got to take it. He's got to wear it for a year. And so you like you said, you bottle. You know what? What do they always advise you to do? Bottle those emotions up. Just don't let anything out. Just keep, just like a pressure cooker. Just keep it all bottled up until just one day you just explode in a ball of rage. That's, every psychologist will tell you to do that. And that's what Ryan Day and the Buckeyes have to do. They have to take all the Desmond Howard making jokes in front of CJ Stroud at the Heisman and Jim Harbaugh talking about him being born on third. You bottle it all up, and then you go Mentos and Diet Coke next November, and 340 days or whatever it is now. And then you have a real good line. You have all year. You don't have to jerk store. You don't have to come up with something afterwards. You've got all year. You've got a social media team. Get a writer's room together. Spitball some stuff. Whiteboard some stuff. Like, you've got time. And then you win next year's game, and then you get to say whatever you want, and Jim Harbaugh has to sit there and take.
I'm just imagining, like Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, like, all of these great writers will get in a room and they just spend time, hours and hours and weeks and months. And you do the same thing with OSU social media. Like, well, we need a witty retort that cuts, that is hurtful, that doesn't cross the line, but it could if you wanted to take it a step further. And then it all boils down to, well, what about just, blank you? Just the old standard.
Have a safe drive from all of us here on third base. Have a safe trip home. There you go. There's it. That's it. Write that down. That's good. I mean, boom. You know what? That's free. That one's free. Next one you got to pay for.
No, Tom, don't say that's free, because that's going to be on a t-shirt and we should be making money from that. So
that one's free for you to buy from us once we merge it out. So look forward to that.
Perfect. That will do it for this particular episode. Want to thank you all for joining in. We are not done with the listener questions, but as news happens, we will also talk about it. Should it happen, and if news has happened and we have not yet talked about it, look.
Listen here, you little punks. That's what Tony wants to say. I would never, but Tony, that I could see it in his eyes. That's what he wanted to say.
Well, and the first question again did start out, I want, and you know what? This is what you're going to get. So want to thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you guys later.